You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
Welcome to Women's Media Center Live. I'm Robin Morgan. You're listening to us on CBS radio station 1580 AM in the Washington, D.C. area, or you're streaming us from the web, WMCLive.com, where you can also find links to podcasts of previous shows. And let us hear from you. Tweet us at hashtag WMCLive or email us at womensmediacenterlive@gmail.com. Well, it's March, which means the March hare babbles. Caesar dies in the Senate, sort of like legislation these days. Spring arrives on the 20th, and it's Women's History Month. So we are celebrating with quite a show. Julie Burkhart, who is risking her life to reopen the murdered Dr. Tiller's abortion clinic, is here. The fine actor Debra Winger is here to talk about her Concerned Citizens campaign against fracking. And Gail Collins, author and wonderful New York Times columnist, is here. I'm really proud to welcome all three of these women. But first, we have to go inside the headlines. Now, as you may have noticed, the Pope has retired. The real reasons are, I'm sure, much more complicated than those that have been given. The church is basically imploding. By the way, the last time a pope retired, which was about 600 years ago, it gave rise to a split papacy. That was two popes at the same time, one sitting in Avignon and one in Rome. So maybe something fun like that will happen this time. At the minimum, it's farcical. It's like a cross between, I don't know, a comic opera, sort of maybe Abduction from the Seraglio crossed with Godfather 3. The issue of infallibility particularly appeals to me because what happens when you have two infallible popes or when one is retired? Where does the infallibility go? So I learned that this is what happens. Since he was taken by helicopter to Castel Gandolfo, where he will stay until his quarters are prepared by hapless nuns scurrying around cleaning, when he was helicoptered, the Holy Spirit, which gives him infallibility, apparently departed, and it's up there hovering over the Vatican in a plume of smoke, not the smoke when they vote, but the smoke of just the Holy Spirit. And then when a new pope is chosen, apparently the infallibility knows that, and the Holy Ghost comes down and descends, and guess what? The new pope is infallible at that moment. But it's the fact that infallibility is in limbo in the interim that particularly appeals to me. Meanwhile, the cardinals are jockeying for position as this hierarchy of elderly, mostly white, supposedly celibate males ruling on the lives and bodies of women, or thinking that they can. I do confess that they have awfully pretty frocks. I mean, all that lace, that satin, those vivid colors, red shoes, and they give good theater. Bells and smells, as it's called. Anyway, in all their skullduggery, two cases especially got my attention. One, as you may have noticed, was the Scottish Archbishop. And first he got my attention because he was saying things like, the celibacy of the clergy, whether priests should marry or not. Jesus didn't say that. That's not of divine origin. And people should have relationships and get married if they want. And I thought, well, that's a human. And of course, then they vamped down on him for ostensibly, supposedly, allegedly, all those caveats, having inappropriate relations with some priests. And I can't help wondering whether they vamped down on him because he'd made these fairly liberal comments, or whether, in fact, he'd made these liberal comments because he's not a liberal but a libertine. It's just a real confusion. There is, however, one really interesting item on the church, which is that Germany's Roman Catholic bishops said last week that hospitals run by the church could provide women who had been raped with versions of the morning after pill to prevent fertilization. Now, since the church already denounced Plan B, this is very strange. the Catholic Church in Germany had faced a lot of criticism after a rape victim had been turned away by 2 hospitals run by the Church in Cologne because they were afraid of the Vatican. But the bishops then said they hadn't been aware that various forms of emergency contraception were available. Where have they been? And after consulting with medical experts and with the Vatican, they agreed that administering drugs that in no way aborted a fertilized egg was justified in cases of rape. Well, but the Vatican's been saying it isn't. Anyway, the German bishops, and I never thought I'd say this, seem to be, I don't know how else to put it, unlikely allies. Now to our first guest. For years, Julie Burkhart worked with her colleague, abortion rights provider Dr. George Tiller, at his clinic in Kansas. Then he was shot to death by an anti-choice fanatic in 2009. Now, in the face of death threats herself, she is daring to reopen the Wichita, Kansas clinic. Welcome, Julie, to Women's Media Center Live.
Thank you. It's wonderful to be with you today.
You worked with George Tiller, with Dr. Tiller, for about 7 years, didn't you?
That's correct. I had the privilege of working with him. Met him in 2001, and I was able to work for him then in 2002. And
after his murder, when they gunned him down in church 4 years ago, the clinic has basically sat empty, except wasn't there one attempt to try to start it up, but it failed?
Well, there's a physician here locally who wanted to provide abortion services to women in this area, but yes, she was not able to do that. So that attempt did not come to fruition.
Well, I'm certainly not going to ask you why you're doing this, because we face a situation where I believe it's close to 87% of all counties in this country lack a provider now. But I am going to ask you, given the threats, given the fact that Tiller was murdered, you're on a front line of feminism anyway. The women who staff and manage abortion clinics are our first line of defense and incredibly courageous. But why now? Has anything in particular changed that makes you feel this was more necessary or more possible?
Well, I think, after Dr. Tiller's murder, we all did a lot of soul searching and trying to figure out, what was the next right step. Was this the place we and me on a personal level, did I want to continue to engage in this work? And it just seemed that, after a period of time that this did feel like the right thing to do. So, we've been on this path for 2.5 years, in order to buy the clinic and, get the doctors and, open the doors. So, and we're planning on opening the doors this spring.
Wow.
So, yeah, it's exciting.
Wow. Well, it's especially exciting because, which I can imagine why you wanted to rethink the venue, because for a very long period there, Wichita, Kansas was ground zero for Operation Rescue and the most fanatical of the anti-abortion rights people.
Yes, and we have faced some of that, after we purchased the clinic, groups like Operation Rescue and some other Kansas-based groups, have, beefed up their efforts in order to keep our doors closed. So we have faced the bullying, the harassment, the stalking, the picketing, but, we will prevail, and that's just the bottom line.
They were trying to change zoning rules on you, weren't they?
Yes, and fortunately, we went before the Zoning Commission last week, and we won, which, so that was a really nice victory. There were people on the Planning Commission who are reasonable, logical people, and didn't feel that it was right to try to take our property away.
Wow. And what about the state legislature? Where are their heads these days, if they have any?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, that's another story. And, we see all types of just bad, anti-choice legislation, coming down the pike. So, that we will just have to deal with as it comes. If, the governor does indeed sign any of this legislation into law, we'll just have to deal with it one statute at a time. But, however, it will not prohibit us from opening. So that's the bottom line.
As you say that again and again, it gives me the small courage to dare ask you the question that's in everybody's minds and is hard to ask. You're clearly really driven in the face of enormous threat, in a place where threat has been carried out. What drives you? What gives you that extra edge of amazing defiance? Because women need to know. So you know how we say you need to see it in order to be it, and we all need to be you when we grow up.
Oh my gosh, thank you. And I still feel like I have a lot of growing up to do myself. After Dr. Tiller's death, and just sitting back and looking at what I wanted to do on a personal level. What I kept coming back to was that, sure, I could go off and do some kind of work and, some other fine organization or, change careers or, but I just felt at the end of the day that if we don't continue to fight for what is right, and that's the rights of women to be free everywhere in this country, then I just really didn't feel like the rest of it was worth it. So that's just in a not so eloquent way. That's how I made my decision, and I felt like after a period of time that I did have the energy to do this. So,
do you get scared?
Sure. Yeah, I do.
Mm-hmm.
I do because I've had protesters at my house a couple times. We've had protesters here at the clinic. And I have a family.
Yeah.
And so I'm concerned about my daughter. Sure.
But is it a feel the fear and do it anyway kind of thing?
Yes, it's face the fear, walk through the fear. This is, as tough as this is, I almost every day, I absolutely love what I'm doing.
This is Women's History Month, and this is our first show in that month as we look back at women's history and we talk about heroines or heroes or sheroes, as some people would have it. But the funny thing is, we've got our heroes right now today, and you're one of them. And in a quiet, understated fashion, the daily risk that you take for women's freedom and self-determination is it's just a great honor to have you on the show. So please know we are all with you. And if there's anything, tell us if there's something that people can do, because this is an activist listenership, to be of use and to help.
Well, I would say that people can visit our website, trustwomenpac.org. That has anything and everything on it. We put updates on the clinic, legislation. That's where we put all of our information. And I guess I would like to say to people, to please, stay tuned. And, we are definitely, we will be facing our battles here, and we'll have battles here. And it would be nice to know that, if and when those come, that we would have the support of people everywhere.
Well, you've got it. And anytime you want to use the airways and this show as to get the word out, you know where we are. Thank you for being with us on Women's Media Center Live. Thank you for what you're doing and the dignity and grace that you're doing it with.
Thank you, and thank you for this lovely interview.
We have to pause for a short break here. This is Women's Media Center Live, and I'm Robin Morgan. Do you fully understand what fracking is? When we return, we'll talk with a woman who is not only a fine actor, but a passionate campaigner against it, Debra Winger. After Hurricane Sandy, parts of the East Coast have returned to normal, but others won't see normal again for quite some time. One group getting volunteers and aid supplies to those who need it is called Occupy Sandy. Made up of a coalition of Occupy Wall Street activists, community organizers, and technologists, Occupy Sandy is using social media and other software tools to identify and quickly respond to urgent needs among the hardest-hit communities. You can help. To donate or to volunteer, visit occupysandy.org.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
And we're back with our second guest. Debra Winger made us cry in terms of endearment. Then she was a dangerous woman. Then she was profound in Shadowlands and generally excellent in so much else, including the recent TV series In Treatment. Now she's also investing that intensity and intelligence in fighting the practice of fracking. Welcome, Debra, to Women's Media Center Live.
Oh, thanks, Robin. It's nice to be here.
Well, I want to start right in talking about fracking. For the few listeners who waste no time.
No, I just love the word. I haven't gotten used to what a great word they've given us in fracking.
Yes, it is.
I'd like to talk about fracking. Well, wouldn't we all?
Most people sort of have an idea of what it is, but if in a few choice words, if you could re-explain for people who don't really know, what is it?
I've never claimed to be an environmentalist. I do so many naughty things, but I do recognize a public health hazard when I see one, and that's what happened to me about 5 years ago when I started hearing about fracking in New York State, in Pennsylvania first. Basically what it is we've been drilling vertically for gas for umpteen years. We've had lots of natural gas that was close under the surface of the earth that we've been drawing from. I don't know how old you are or your listenership, but I grew up with a little blue flame on my television set that said clean burning natural gas.
Me too.
It looked pretty and it looked like a good thing, and you turned on your stove and the gas came on and everything was nice.
And it was called natural, yeah.
It's called natural gas, and it is. It's naturally occurring methane, and it exists. Now, did we get all of those pockets that lay safely, in a place where, drilling is never safe, but in some definition of the word, it was safe? Yes. Was it clean burning? Well, we've redefined clean because now we have furnaces that suck back up the part that wasn't clean and burn it again, so we're even becoming more efficient about that. But that's how they've slid into this whole new world of, I can't probably say that on your, but this hellish thing that is called fracking, which is not, it has very little to do with the old-timey drilling for natural gas. And I think they're trying to just sort of grandfather it in. Well, this is just, now we're going into rock shale formations, and we are drilling down, 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 and then we are going horizontally to follow that shale formation, and then we are injecting umpteen chemicals into that fracking, it's called fracking fluid, and we are shattering that shale, which is a very unpredictable and unstable practice. They can't predict how it will crack. They can't predict where those fissures will happen, but it releases the gas that they want. And of course, then it also leaves those chemicals, they say, safely deep down in the earth. Now, I don't know what you define safe as,
Well, I don't define it as the chemicals are arsenic,
once you're putting the benzene, well, those are, the list,
formaldehyde,
the
lead.
list would stagger most people, but
the
frightening part is that they don't even divulge all of them. They're endocrine inhibitors. There are things that are directly related to many diseases and causes for great concern to human beings, let alone farm animals, and I guess most importantly to me, which makes it a public health hazard, is our water supply.
Oh.
So once you're talking about the water supply and you're talking about the grass that cows graze on, and you're talking about the grapes that grow for the wine that we drink and for everything that gives sustenance to our food belt, well, you're not just talking about gas drilling anymore. We have never taken the time to say what happens both socioeconomically and environmentally to the earth and the people that live nearby these sites.
Tell me something. This so-called solution to the energy problem, because that's the way it's promulgated.
Yeah, well, what does that sound like, first of all? Solution, the final solution to the energy problem?
You got it. But it's being brought to us by the same folks who brought us the problem to begin with, isn't it? I mean, the big oil companies, the big...
Well, of course, all of the information comes from the gas and oil, and I'm sorry, but I think most of us are not ignorant anymore to the fact that most of our politicians are subsidized by the gas and oil industry. And so it's very hard to get elected unless you find some way to, let's take out the ones that are in the pocket. That's, those are at least we can deal with those. Those are on the front. But what are we talking about when we're talking about Andrew Cuomo? What are we talking about when we're talking about Barack Obama? Because we're talking about people who have their hands tied, really. They want in their speeches to address climate change. But how can they even speak that in the same breath that they're talking about fracking New York State? Because the methane that's released and it is counterintuitive. And in fact, Arthur Elkins Jr., the EPA Inspector General, just released a quote on February 21st, which is why we're cautiously optimistic at this moment. And his quote is, "With limited data, human health risks are uncertain. States may design incorrect or ineffective emission control strategies, and EPA's decisions about regulating industry may be misinformed."
Wow. What can people do?
What can people do? Well, I mean, we've been the loudest and most sort of ragtag grassroots movement, certainly in the last decade, and probably beyond that. We have never coalesced as one group because of the need in areas to just speak out loudly, quickly, and so it's been very hard to organize. But in fact, the outcry has been loud enough that we have, thank God, kept it from New York. That doesn't mean that accidents have not already happened with vertical drilling, because they have no worker regulations. They have no regulations per se.
Well, if people write the governor in our case, New York, in other states, the gubernatorial office, does that have any effect?
Well, of course. I mean, the comments we have comment periods. In other words, they have 90 days each time they propose one of these things. They have 90 days in which they must take public comment. If they do not then pass their resolution, their bill, in those 90 days, it goes to another 90 days. So we've been buying time that way, and that's only come from letters that people have written to Cuomo, to everyone involved, to their local legislators, to, up in Albany, we've marched, we've lobbied, we've been in D.C. Yes, it's part of a bigger issue, which is called climate change, that everybody likes to talk about, but it is of essential importance right now because lives are endangered. All you have to do is travel across the country and look at our new breed of hairless cows to understand that we're doing something bad.
Oh, wow. It's another love canal, but even larger.
Oh, it's much larger. Yeah, water is all connected, you know.
We only have about a minute left, but I'm going to be drawn and quartered by my friends who, like me, are enamored of your artistry. If I don't say that the last things that we saw you in, you're better than ever, like Rachel getting married and in treatment. And is there anything coming up that we can look forward to?
Well, I'm obviously I'm passing into this this area of a woman's life that becomes, sometimes nebulous. I have spent the last decade to, a dozen years, sort of, I guess, what became naturally a giving back for such a nice ride, and I've, raised 3 kids, and I feel like I'm looking for what is real for me now. As a woman my age.
Listen, you taught at Harvard, and you've been active in reconciliation between Arabs and Jews in Palestine, Israel. You know, that's not chopped liver.
No, I've like I say, you were asking specifically about show business, and
yeah.
I sort of, have been captivated by the business of life for these years. I'm always looking for when they will reunite in my life where I can do work that comes out of who I am now. And as soon as we get over this spate of facelifts and, women altering their appearance to look, some way that I don't really, it just doesn't compute for me. So once we're back to telling stories about people that are actually out there in the world, I'm quite interested in working. I've never said that I disliked acting. I just didn't like the business.
Well, we're with you, whatever you do, and we're very glad that your voice is this eloquent on fracking. And we have all got our emails ready to go and our pens and papers if we're Luddites.
Yes, we just have to stay active and loud, and I think that if we can save New York State, it'll stand for something globally, because, if you look at a natural gas map of the world, it would freak you out, and instead of fracking you out. But China, which holds, probably the most natural gas, is set, we have to start informing the world instead of answering.
Well, we always say think global, act local. So this is a perfect example of that.
That is exactly it.
Thank you so much for being on Women's Media Center Live, and for everything you do. Thanks, Debra.
Thanks so much.
Break time again. This is Women's Media Center Live, and I'm Robin Morgan. Next, we'll talk with the columnist who hilariously kept reminding us that Mitt Romney once drove to Canada with his dog strapped to the roof of his car. When we come back.
Want to stay informed when there are changes to Social Security? Subscribe to receive automatic email updates on popular Social Security web pages with the click of a button. Just visit www.socialsecurity.gov/GOV delivery. More than 1 million people already receive updates to the pages they're most interested in. You can too. Look for the red envelope followed by a link that says Get Email Updates. To learn more, visit www.socialsecurity.gov/GOV delivery. Social Security delivers.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
Welcome back to a double segment conversation with Gail Collins, the voraciously read columnist for the New York Times, the former Times editorial page editor, and the author of numerous books, including 2 important works on American women. Welcome, Gail, to Women's Media Center Live.
Always a pleasure to talk to you, Robin.
Well, it's very good to have you here. I want to start this segment with you on journalism, and then we'll move on to American women. Not that the two don't overlap. And I want to start with a personal question that a colleague, when she found out that I was going to be interviewing you, asked, and I think it's a wonderful question. How do you manage the balance in your column between real humor and wit, sometimes rolling on the floor, clutching my ribs, and in the same column morph into dead seriousness.
Well, that's so nice of you.
But it's true. It's true, you know.
Well, to be totally serious, when I started out in doing this stuff, in fact, you know, years ago, someone from a women's magazine called me and wanted to know about humor and writing columns and stuff like that. And I think she was pushing toward a conclusion that I used humor because I didn't want to offend because I was a woman, and that made things seem softer. The true reason that I got into using humor was that I started by covering the Connecticut state legislature. I mean, you know how hard it is to get anybody to pay attention to the Connecticut state legislature? I mean, we would have meetings about how the heck can we get anybody to care about the guaranteed tax base proposal, which is now moving through the state Senate. And I found that it was easier if you could make it funny, that people are much, much more inclined to read stuff if they think that they're going to be amused.
Well, they got you coming and going, because if you're funny, then you're being superficial and trying to please. But on the other hand, feminists have no sense of humor.
Well, you're right. Then I won.
Yeah. But it's the shift within the same column. There are columnists who are funny, and there are columnists who are serious. But you do a prestidigitation thing that goes on. You would start a column. You know about this because I started writing you fan notes. I was in such stitches over the mantra, the refrain about driving with the dog strapped to the
Mitt
roof.
Romney with the dog on the roof.
Yeah,
Seamus. I've got to tell you, my life was so much easier when I had Seamus.
I do too. Seamus, you may have single-handedly changed this entire campaign, but it would start with Seamus, or Seamus would be dropped in there just sort of en passant during the column, but the rest of the column would be solid and serious, and the mix. It's an amazement how you pull the mix off.
Well, that's really nice of you, but the goal was always to try to take things that I thought were important, but to write them in a way that people will be interested in reading them. You know, it's very, right. Especially if you write a column for a long time, it's so easy to just make your readers want to shoot themselves in the morning, because you can just go on, look what happened, and it happened, and then he did this, and they did that. Yeah. So it's just sort of, I mean, my hope was always that you could find ways to make people interested in what was happening and engaged in a way that did not make them suicidally depressed.
Well, you have precisely that effect, but it's real wit. I mean, and there's a writerly aspect to it that I will sometimes just read the column as a reader, and then I'll go back and read the column as a writer to think, how the hell did she do this?
You're so nice.
You know, so, well, let's expand the lens a little bit and look at other women in journalism, or where are women, or how are we doing? I know that you know some of these, but for the listeners, I want to just share some statistics on this time on print media, although it's no better, even worse in broadcast media. But according to the American Society of News Editors newsroom census, women represented roughly 37% of newsroom employees between 1999 and 2010. And then in 2011, we bumped way up to 40% of newspaper newsroom employees. That covers newspaper reporters, photographers, copy and layout, editors, supervisors, and so forth. And what is or even more depressing is that as subjects of stories, this really gets me. Globally, 24% of news stories are about women. And, of course, we're the majority of the world population, so that's a little skewed. In 2005, stories about women in politics and government with the focus of only 12% of stories, and came all the way up to 14% 5 years later. So, and on news websites, we're 23% of newsmakers, and so it gets no better if you look at book reviews, who the book reviewers are, and which books are reviewed, because both you and I are book writers as well. So, it's pale and it's male. And I know we're making inroads, but tell me something so I don't get suicidal.
We always try. It's very strange in the newsrooms. There does not seem to be any shortage of women. As you know, our executive editor is a woman at the time.
Jill Abramson. Yeah.
Jill Abramson. And I was the editorial page editor before I went back to writing a column. And our president of the company before this one was a woman. I mean, I've never felt at least in recent years, going into a newsroom that there was a shortage of women. And certainly whenever you teach journalism, there's just a humongous proportionate number of women in the schools. There's parts of it that the part that I can speak to best, to tell you the truth, because I've worked on it so long, is the question of commentary. There are way, way more guys writing columns than women. There are way, way more op-ed pieces by men in general in newspapers than by women, and there are way, way more letters to the editor by men than women. And when you get down to letters to the editor, then you realize that part of this is self-selecting, that there are, in fact, right now more men than women kind of raising their hand saying, hey, I've got an opinion thingy here. And I can't, we've had so many meetings about this, and everything that I say about this, there is no way still of not saying that there's no excuse. You just have to work on this and strive for some kind of equality and balance. But I remember one meeting, somebody said, well, maybe the problem is that women are less willing to immediately take a strong position on an issue which they have only very superficial knowledge about. And I thought, well, that's the definition of what I do. Yeah. So that's a problem. But it does seem to me true, and I talk to groups about women about this, that women in general, making a wildly sweeping statement, do like to think about things a little more and sort of let people, maybe let a friend or a colleague look at something they've written and talk about it a little bit and think it through. And everything about the media now militates against that. Right. It's all the reward is to the person that can get up fastest with a comment about something that happens. And that's worse than it used to be because of the Internet. That's way worse. Yeah. And with our letters to the editor, when I, first got into the editorial department business, nobody would say, well, we want to get all the letters in the day right after the State of the Union speech, for instance. You would just run them out over the next week. And now it's the next day. You want them there the very next day. So it's just, partly I just think it's, that the history of the universe, it's been about 2 seconds since women were encouraged to give their opinions at all. Yeah, that's true. If it takes a little bit longer to get them on an equal footing for saying superficial things they're not sure are right. I don't know. Maybe that's not too terrible. No, it's interesting because it's almost like being punished for thoughtfulness. It is true, and this is the way of the world now. But the way of the world is the way of the world, and if women aren't prepared to get their thoughts out really fast after something happens, they do get punished. So we have to figure out ways to make them both skillful, confident, and well-informed when they do it. Yeah, because we need those voices. Really, and we need them at an excellent level. Well, we're going to have to take a little pause here, and then we'll come back and talk more maybe about a little bit about journalism, but also about here we are, the 50th anniversary of Betty Friedan's book, and a lot of retrospectives on the women's movement, and you've written 2 extraordinary books on women, and I want to talk about them when we come back. I'm Robin Morgan here with Women's Media Center Live, and we'll return in a minute with more of Gail Collins. So stay tuned.
If you ever need an organ transplant, you will probably die before you get one. Thousands of Americans die waiting every year. You can improve your odds by joining LifeSharers, and it's free. Visit lifesharers.org or call 888-ORGAN-88. LifeSharers puts organ donors first. When you join LifeSharers, you get preferred access to the organs of other members. This could literally save your life. Join Life Sharers today. There's no age limit, parents can enroll their minor children, and no one is excluded due to any pre-existing medical condition. Call 888-ORGAN-88 or visit lifesharers.org. That's LIFESHARERS.org. Life Sharers. It's free. It could save your life.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.
And hello again. Let's pick up with author, columnist, and de facto women's historian, Gail Collins. And we're back with Gail Collins. And for those of you who don't know of her numerous books, there are two that are of special relevance to today's conversation and to Women's History Month. The first is America's Women, 400 Years of Dolls, Drudges, Helpmates, and Heroines, and it's terrific. It was a national bestseller, and it, unlike many national bestsellers, it deserved to be. And the other one, the second one, is When Everything Changed, The Amazing Journey of American Women from 1960 to the Present, which is basically the story of the American women's movement in its contemporary feminist wave.
That's when I first met you. I got to interview you for that book.
That's right. I had been a fan of yours for some time, but you're absolutely right. We met, I think we sat in the garden and talked.
Yeah, that was worth writing the book for, just that.
That was cool.
Also, I wrote the introduction to the new edition of The Feminine Mystique, which is now out, the 50th anniversary.
That's right, you did. That's right. So there's a lot of retrospective looking around and thinking, where have we come? Have we come? How far are we going? And so forth. What's your take on any and all of that?
Yeah, I feel sort of employed this month. This is Feminine Mystique Month for me. But, it's so interesting. It's inevitable that when you get, unless you presume that you're going to move into a utopian paradise, that once you solve one group of problems, you will get another group of problems. Mm-hmm. And since women have had, so much access to the workplace, the problem of childcare and of time management and has become just excruciating. And I spend half of my life thinking, oh my God, in 1971 they passed a national entitlement in Congress for to allow universal access to quality early childhood education and after-school programs, and Richard Nixon vetoed it, and now here we are. It's never going to happen again in my lifetime, and it drives me completely crazy. Yeah. But in so many other ways, when I talk about problems and talk about issues, the biggest, most, horrible, intractable ones to me right now are about class. Mm-hmm. And you can see that through the filter of gender and through the filter of race. But the folk that I worry about out there so much are women who are also constrained by being born poor mm-hmm. and being raised poor and never having a serious option to be anything but poor. And there's a huge number of them that are becoming less and less able to access anything else out there. So that's my...
Yeah. Well, this hits them, the economic crunch hits them hardest. Ironically, they are the women most open to feminism and even using the F word. I mean, they don't mess around because, they know what's what. Some of the younger women of any class are a little bit iffy, but God bless the religious right, because it has done such a favor coming in and making a war on women and radicalizing those young women who bought the line that it was all over and done with. But class, of course, is the unacknowledged suffering in this country. I mean, with all the work that's yet to be done on race and gender, at least they're visible now. And class is still, we have a classless society. So you're absolutely right, And
I must say, I don't worry that, there are so many problems young women today face, but I don't worry about the lack of feminism among younger women.
I don't either.
there's that name thing, which has been a problem throughout our history. There were only about 4 seconds when the word feminism was rather universally popular among young women. When I did the first book, I found stuff from the 1920s with women saying, well, we believe in equality, of course, but feminism suggests unpleasant shoes. And you just look dorky if you're a feminist or something. So it's always been a word problem there. But I've run into 10 billion young women every day, and I've run into very few who were fierce about the question of making sure that they had equal rights and that they help protect the other women's equal rights as well.
No, me too. I must confess I'm heartened by some of the new women who got into Congress because they're much more committed to quote unquote women's issues, which are to me all issues. And to my delight, they're also, one is a Hindu, one is an open atheist, one is the first open lesbian to serve in Congress, and they seem to be less afraid of rattling their chains on class as well as particularly on poor women.
Yeah, and they're also, frankly, much better than the guys when it comes to working together and figuring out ways to solve problems. The Senate women in particular are just very, very proud of the fact that they all have dinner together, a couple of times a session, and that they ironically have their dinners in the Strom Thurmond room, which I find so funny because he was so famous for pinching women when they came by in the hallway. But they have a softball league, and that stuff actually matters. It does matter that there's some sense of actual collegiality, which there is not now among the men for the most part. So, and that's a good thing, and it's a very female thing, and that makes me really proud.
Yeah. I think those were started by Barbara Mikulski.
She's had them going. She's sort of the dean of the entire operation there, and even the youngest and newest members just seem wildly enthusiastic about it.
So, if you were to cast your vision 400 years in the future, having written a book about the 400 years of women's history in the states past, trip on it for a minute, and where do you think we'll be?
400 years. Well, you're going.
if the planet.
You were talking then about us all, wandering around in our transformers across the little.
Well, that's if the planet survives.
That are still around. I don't know. I tend to look forward a little bit shorter periods of time, but I think we're going to come to an age in which the whole family thing is addressed in more radical ways
and transformed.
The question of how you have both work and family, which is, if it was a question of ideology, I don't know where we'd be right now, but it's just so clear that we will never have an economy in which every adult in a family has to go out and work and make money and help support the group. So you're seeing already, I'm seeing with younger women in particular, so many of them who tell me that their husbands or partners are totally willing to stay home and take primary responsibility for the kids. If it turns out that the wife is the one who has either the more lucrative job or simply a job she likes better. We've forgotten now. We were so desperate to make sure we had the right to work that all jobs are not fun jobs.
That's right.
So people would find much more, satisfaction doing, taking care of family, being part of community, doing other stuff.
And I think also that we always say you have to see it to be it, that in terms of getting better jobs, not just jobs for the sake of jobs, and in terms of work-life balance, all of those things, I do think that there are some more models than there used to be, which leads me to ask you, I think that Hillary is going to run. What do you think?
If I had to put money on it, I would say, yeah, she probably will. I think it's so much, when you hit her age, and she's really in good shape, and at this age of our society, being in your late 60s and running for president would not be even interesting, let alone shocking. But I think you do, if you punished yourself as much as she has
Yeah,
over
she
the
has.
past 4 years. You really want to wait kind of and see how you feel 6 months down the line. But yeah, sure, I would certainly think she would run.
That I must say that makes my little heart beat faster. That I might actually live to see it.
I think that's part of it for her. I mean, she is so conscious of the fact that her entire generation will not feel that their journey was really completed unless they saw a woman in the White House.
Right.
And it's really up to her to do it, that there's nobody else over the next 5 or 10 years who seems likely to accomplish it.
My God, the credentials. I mean, even Jefferson and Adams hadn't held as many posts as she had. And that's not counting First Lady. So last question. Looking back on what is very unfinished yet, much to come, but a very distinguished career. What would you say in your career or in life in general was your greatest regret? And what would you say was your greatest pride or joy?
Well, I would think I don't have really any serious regrets, but if I was going to try and help you out here now, I would say,
help a sister out.
Yeah. If I had to do it all over again, I would have had more explicit adventures before I got married. I would, have traveled more around the world and stuff like that. So I guess that would be, what the thing
Wild Oats.
Differently.
So Wild Oats.
Yes. Well, more adventures, more wild oats when I was younger. I think we had some wild oats, but I would have done them in other countries.
and the greatest pride or greatest joy?
My greatest joy. Well, my greatest joy. I have a husband I've been married to for ever since I was in college, and he's my great joy. And my work is my great joy, and my friends are my great joy.
Yeah.
All the stuff. Everything's good.
It sounds really lovely. It sounds good. You deserve. And also, please write more books because I love them also.
I will do my best.
She said, selfishly speaking. Thank you so much for doing this and for being with us. Thanks, Gail.
Bye-bye.
And now it's time for Fighting Words. By the way, many of you wrote to ask for more information from last week's Fighting Words on the witch burnings in Papua New Guinea. That entire commentary is now posted under features at womensmediacenter.com, together with information of places that you can write to in protest. This week we're looking at Zen. A Zen Roshi, or teacher, who is 105 years old, named Joshu Sasaki. He has taught thousands of Americans at his 2 Zen centers in the Southwest, and he has some 30 affiliated centers all the way from the United States through Europe. He's famous for being the Buddhist teacher of Leonard Cohen, the songwriter. He has also allegedly groped and sexually harassed female students for decades. He refuses to respond to requests of interviews or responses. He has his own, wait for it, senior priests conducting their own inquiry. These charges are not unusual, unfortunately. They become more and more frequent in Zen Buddhism, which has been said by victims to have a culture of secrecy, patriarchy, and sexism, to which I can't help but think. And so it differs from other religions. How? Anyway, women say that they were encouraged to believe that being touched by Sasaki was part of their Zen training. One woman who confronted him in the 1980s found herself an outcast afterwards. 3 members wrote in complaints saying that he had asked them to show him their breasts as part of answering a koan, a Zen riddle, or to demonstrate non-attachment. This is like, what is the sound of one breast being assaulted? And then one of his defenders, this is special, another monk, said that sexualizing was teaching for particular women, because some women needed such physicality to check their overly strong egos. It reminded me of a Zen koan that I had quoted in Anatomy of Freedom, that in that book, and it goes like this. It's about Giono, a woman who diligently studied Zen under the master Burkhart for many decades, and she performed every kind of menial task, and she did this with humility, trying to find the secret of eternity, and no matter how long and devotedly she applied it, she never could gain enlightenment. Work. Then finally, after years of this, one night when a moon was in the sky, she was returning from a trip to the well, and she was staggering under the weight of an old wooden bamboo-bound bucket filled to the brim with water, and she stumbled. Suddenly the bamboo split, the bottom fell out of the bucket. And Giorno said, "The water has flowed out of the bucket. The moon has flowed out of the water." And at that moment she attained enlightenment and was free. And she left his service. Now, the koan does not go on to explain how Burkhart himself doubtless attained a different form of the same enlightenment now that he had to do his own work and fetch his own water. But in the best traditions of Zen and feminist theory, I think we can fill that in for ourselves. The same should be true of Sasaki. And that's it for this week. You've been listening to us on CBS station 1580 AM radio in Washington, D.C., and on the web at WMClive.com, which also has podcasts of previous shows. Remember to email us at womensmediacenterlive@gmail.com. Portions of this program were taped earlier. Views expressed here do not represent the WMC. Here is the family for Women's Media Center Live. WMC President and for this program Executive Producer Julie Burton, Senior Producer Crystal Williams-Chancellor, Technical Director Michelle Kinsey-Brunn, and our founding sponsor Regina Kulik-Scully. I'm Robin Morgan. Thanks for being with us. Join us next week when we move further into Women's History Month by taking a close look at the Lilly Ledbetter Act and pay equity on Equal Pay Day, here on Women's Media Center Live.
You're listening to Women's Media Center Live with Robin Morgan on 1580 AM, a CBS station.